where do we go from here? So as a company, where we are right now, we're actually in a pretty good place. At this point, all of the Tratus functionality is complete. In other words, our original goal with Jackalope was to take Tratus and make it better, but have all the functionality that we needed and carry it over so that all of our existing Tratus customers had what they needed to make the product work well. We've gone through, and I think Iowa was our last user to be migrated, and they've been successfully migrated at this point. So at this point, everybody's churning along on Jackalope and everything's looking good. We're still, basically we're in the mode right now where we're fixing bugs. There are still bugs out there, and we're making efficiency improvements. Jeff has done a lot of work in the past month or two on making readers faster. We got a big slowdown because we started introducing 5-minute interval data, I think it was, that caused a bunch of slowdowns. And so there's been a lot of efficiency improvements over the last couple months, and we're still doing minor improvements here and there. As people say, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? We're still kind of doing that, and that's where we are right now. We're kind of in that limbo phase before we're about ready to jump off and do some more exciting things. And that's the question, is where do we go from here? Whoops. I stole Susie's slide and I didn't check the animation stuff. Oh, okay. So what's next? We still have Jiras with things. Well, we need to do this reader. We're working on turning movement now for Idaho. There's still, and we will continue to have minor improvements and features to the system just throughout the process. That's a forever thing. We're always going to be doing minor tweaks to the software, and that includes bug fixes. Every time we do new features, it's just the nature of software. Bugs get introduced, but we'll go through and continually be making the minor improvements pretty much in perpetuity. The other thing we would like to do is to improve our Jackalope web services, which we talked about it, was it Monday? I can't remember now. We talked about basically the ability to query data from Jackalope without going through the public database. The public database is a huge resource hog. It takes a lot of actual physical resources on the computer in terms of hard drive. It takes up processing resources in terms of keeping things in sync and updating the public database, and it takes our resources. We spend a huge amount of time as a company dealing with public database issues. And so even if we can't get rid of the public database completely, minimizing its impact on everything is something we'd like to go towards. And the main road to that is our web services, or our web services endpoint, which already exists. I talked about, you can't do a lot with it right now. But before our next users group, I would love to be able to have an endpoint where you can query data. You can get volume data by site, by date, through this, and not have to go through the public database. So in terms of our roadmap for the next year, that's going to be part of it. We may not be completely done with it, but that's certainly going to be part of it. Roads and highways, we've already talked about. We talked about that this morning, but that's going to be a big part of what we do in the next year, is try to get that going. And Susie talked about the timeline earlier, proof of concept by end of year, keep making sure we have all the use cases there by end of year, and then moving on to actual implementation of the real code after that. I also talked about this morning a problem that we've been having, we had with the roads and highways proof of concept, which is our technology at this point is kind of old. When we started writing Jackalope 6 years ago, something like that, and we froze the technology. We said this is the
2013, just saying.
Yeah, 7 years ago. Oh my gosh. So we froze the tool sets we were using, because as you're developing software, you don't want to change the tools that you're using as well. It just adds another variable to the mix. And so we froze everything, Java 7, Groovy, which is the programming language we use, has a certain version number, Grail is a certain version number. And it hasn't changed since then. And 7 years is an eternity in software world. And we desperately need to upgrade our tools. And I know this isn't super interesting to you guys, but it's something that is a requirement at this point. It will allow us to have much better security, being on the most recent tools. And we can also, the more recent tools also, do have cooler things. They have cooler user interface experiences. They have cooler, things that we can do. So it's not just a technology thing. It's not just something that'll happen behind the scenes. It will enable us to have better looking software, quicker software. But it's been long enough that we absolutely just have to do this at this point. And right now, that's a stumbling block. We can't get past this roads and highways thing probably, unless we do have Nicholas go to his IT people and say, make your portal less secure. We pretty much have to do this. It's going to bite us. It's going to keep biting us if we don't. So we do need to do that. But then we need to just start thinking about where we go from here. One of the advantages of having a Jackalope as a software is, you pay us annual maintenance to keep us in business, and then we want the software to do what you want it to do. And we're honestly at that point where you can, with vision, say, this is what I want Jackalope to be in a year or 2 or 3. What new features do I want? So just some ideas. We've talked about sitemap improvements. Being able to generate a volume report or something from the map, or being able to do any number of things from the map, making a public portal map. There's a bunch of cool things we could do there. A partial purge is one of the things that probably needs to be done regardless, but the ability to purge like 2 hours from the middle of the count, that sort of thing. Polling is something that's been talked about in the past. So polling is, of course, speaking of Peak and Viper and all of that, polling is software that goes out and communicates directly with the device, brings the data back. And so having one integrated system that does it all, so you don't have to have your Centurion software for Diamonds or Viper for Peak. You could just have Jackalope, and Jackalope manages all the polling errors, and then all the submits it automatically into Jackalope, so it's basically seamless. And we've talked a few times over the years about a mobile app and what people might be interested with regards to a mobile app. It's mainly from our earlier talks been something scheduler related. So you generate your schedule in-house, and then you assign a schedule to a user in Jackalope, and then that user can actually have the schedule on his phone or his or her phone or laptop or whatever. So some sort of mobile app might be something that's interesting to people. And there's a ton of other things where we can go to, some other thing we haven't even talked about. I'm seeing someone is commenting. We do need to, okay, that's true, Susie. We do need to add the 2021 changes for TMG. And that's, I think for me, that's part of this continuing minor improvements bullet. That's just part of the baseline maintenance that we do. We're constantly trying to keep up to date with the Stevens, and if a vendor comes out with new software and we've got to support a new reader, that to me is just sort of part of we're going to always be doing that kind of thing. But I agree, we need to make sure we add the 2021 changes for sure. Steven says, do you know we have all TMS sites mapped in Tableau? A check of functional classes being done now versus what HPMS has for the same roadway segments for each site. I did not know that. I'm not sure I even know what Tableau is.
It's just software for data analytics.
Okay.
They can map certain things. do.
Yeah, it's a great way of putting data out. When you talked about having a sitemap and taking your data and putting it out on, for people to use, and it's kind of a little much simpler. That's what we're looking at. It's a quick way of getting your data out, and people. There's a whole Power BI and Tableau. These are two methods and that people are utilizing a lot to provide data to customers. And so if you want me to demo the Tableau, I'd be happy to show you what it looks like. It's anybody who logs in the TMAS, it's on the front screen is the link to the Tableau map, and it shows all sites in the United States. So
okay, yeah, I'll definitely check that out. I'm intrigued for sure. So with regards to what's next, I think our next quarterly user group meeting, first off, I want to talk about the MADT question that we talked about on day one of the users group meeting, and do a discussion on what that means and whether we want, how we want to move forward with that. That's one thing we need to do at the next quarterly user group meeting. But also, if between now and then, if you guys have ideas on where we can go from here, we could get that list together and present it at the users group meeting as well. These are not equal. Implementing sitemap improvements and polling do not take the same amount of effort on our side. So we could come to that meeting with kind of an idea of how difficult things are, and maybe we could even start choosing, here's where we want to go. So yes, if you wouldn't mind, if you think about it and go, wow, it'd be cool if Jackalope did this, send us an email and we will add it to the list and we'll get an idea. We'll sort of think about how hard it is, and we can talk.
Do you want to cover real quickly, Joe, for people who might not know what partial purge means? Because they may not know how helpful that might be to them.
Yeah, so Jackalope supports holy data, not in the saint sense, but in the data sparsity sense. So if you have a short-term count, and let's say that count is 72 hours long, but halfway through the count for 8 hours, the tube came up and was flopping in the breeze. But then someone came back and nailed it down. So you have 8 hours in the middle of that count that's completely worthless. It's all zeros or something like that. Partial purge is the ability to basically null all that data out and exclude it from consideration. And there's a few things that go along with that. One is that when you start dealing with holes that aren't, or when you start dealing with data that's not contiguous, where 1 hour comes after the next, there's a few things that have to happen. First of all, your minimum duration checks have to change. So people right now say, well, we have to have at least 48 hours of data. Well, okay, well, you might have a 48-hour count with 8 hours in the middle missing. Is that still 48 hours? Probably not. One of the checks we implemented to help with that is, instead of doing it consecutive hours, how many hours do you need, is how many hours of each hour do you need represented in your count. So let's say you normally say, I want 48 hours of data for an ADT, otherwise I want it errored out. You could say, I want 2 hours of each hour represented in this file. So I need 2 0 to 1 a.m. hours. I need 2 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. hours. And the key there is it doesn't matter where those hours are. If you have a 3-day count and you purge the entire middle day of it, it could still pass this check because you have 2 midnight to 1 a.m. hours. But it also changes well, it actually doesn't change. Our code already handles the ability to deal with holy data in terms of our Hollenbeck technique of creating ADTs from short-term counts. Already deals with not having contiguous data. So that's the other part of that needs to be dealt with. And we need an interface for it, and the ability to note it. So okay, Bob went in and purged these data, these hours, and then you could put Y. So the note component all needs to be there. So that's, sorry, didn't mute my phone. So that's the partial purge. Any questions on that?
There is a comment from Stephen in the chat.
Okay, so TMAS 3.0, next version of TMAS, is planned to move from the AASHTO ADT to the FHWA ADT method. We know every year of our TBT reports at the end of the year is slightly underestimating VMT travel in the US. TBT versus HPMS VM2 table. And we suspect part of the slight underestimate is partially due to the ADT formula. Do you have, Sydney, did you ask Stephen, or should I ask Stephen? Do you have the actual research for that we could look at? Is that part of the ADT pool fund study?
Yeah, that's it's on our public website for the if you look on our public website under the reports section, and it's the very first one. It's the ADT study, and it's that's too.
Unintuitive to me that there would be a bias in one direction.
Oh, what's a significant bias? Everybody uses the AASHTO. It's a significant underestimation of VMT or ADT, which leads to VMT. Yeah, everybody is. If you're using AASHTO, you're underestimating your VMT.
And is the rationale for that statement in the output that we can look at?
Yeah, and that is correct. And the Mark, who actually did the first ADT formula way back in 1980s, actually we didn't believe what came out of this research. We thought it was just amazing that there was this error, right? I mean, after all these years, we find, after 30 plus years, we find this issue with a bias. And because we never understood when we did this TBT report why every year we're slightly overestimating vehicle miles travel or underestimating vehicle miles travel just a little bit. It's not a huge amount, but it's like, a 0.5% or so. And, we want it to be dead on. And so this study found that was the case, that this new method removes that downward bias that tends to exist from true ADT versus, using different methods. And then when Mark analyzed it, he figured it out that it's because of how the MADT assumes that all MADTs are equal. Because of the number of weekends versus non-weekends in each different month. And this is a constantly moving variable from month to month, year to year. And the AASHTO method all counts them equal. There's no difference. And that's incorrect. Mathematically, it's incorrect way of doing it. So,
Yeah, I definitely want to see that because I completely agree with Mark's initial assessment. That is completely unintuitive to me. I would think those errors would average out over the years.
Yeah, they don't. And so what Mark did is he actually, because he didn't believe it, he's like, man, really, are we that far off? And because he we gave him all of this millions of records and analysis that was done, and he looked over it, and anyway, the bottom line was he actually plotted out like 5 years worth of data, right? And he showed, okay, if looking at the trend of how many weekends versus weekdays, which months would be over, which months would be under, and the trend, and you could see that it doesn't average out. That it's underestimating it.
So I'm a little bit confused because MADT is not a variable in the AASHTO ADT calculation method. You don't use MADT to get to ADT.
That is correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, we'll look at it too because I'm.
Yeah, Joe. Sorry to interrupt. I actually wrote a program this morning, and I'm looking at Wisconsin counts that are 365 days and calculating it, doing the different methods. So true ADT versus our Jackalope method, which is AASHTO, versus the FHWA method. And so by Friday, we can look at it and see.
Okay. Yeah, I'll be curious, sure. And I also want to read that paper.
I know.
And Jonathan from who runs the Highway Travel Monitoring TRB committee, also did a study in Canada because he wanted to confirm it. He was like, "Wow, this is pretty interesting," and so he actually redid it with Canada's data and found the same result, the exact same result.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. I want to. It's easier if I kind of look at the data and understand it myself, and I think Joe is the same way. So we need to kind of prove it ourselves. So
Yeah.
I mean, we're not talking like a 10% shift here. I mean, it's not going to be
No,
huge, but it is statistically significant. So,
Okay.
anyway,
Jeff, you're muted. You're muted, Jeff. I hear Jeff through the wall, but not through. I think Jeff was going to say something, but I can't hear him.
maybe he's ordering pizza.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to talk and okay. I'm still muted. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, I was just trying to clarify, can you say exactly which statistic is being underestimated? Are you talking about DVMT across short-term sites or?
No, when you analyze the data, you're not underestimating it through the annualization process. When you take and you have a permanent site and you have like 360 days worth of data, if you have the full year, there's almost there's a slight downward bias, but it's not much. But when you start missing days, the AASHTO method, the way it's calculated, will underestimate vehicle miles, AADT, which leads to underestimated vehicle miles traveled for those segments. So it's only in the calculation of your AADT value that it actually is a statistic in play.
Yeah.
It does not affect your portable count.
I think at this point we don't have enough information. We'll look at it, Stephen, and we'll do that before the first quarterly users group, so we can come to that meeting informed.
Yeah, and Joe, we took the data that you gave us. Remember, I don't know if you remember, but way back in 2015, we asked for data from MS2 and from High Desert, and we ran data from both two different sites from both vendors, and we produced it both ways to show you what it looks like. And I believe I sent you that data way back 5 years ago, so you can take a look at that if you want to compare it. So that's available.
Cool. All right. Well, we'll definitely take a look and see. And that will be an agenda item for our next quarterly user group meeting, which Laura will set up. So yeah, so that would be in terms of what's next. Going back to our original topic here. Here are some ideas. We want to get your feedback too. And so, like for example, the MAGT. If we come out of next quarter's user group meeting saying, yeah, this is something we definitely want to do. To me, that's also kind of part of the continuing minor improvements. It's the keeping up with the Jessburgers. So yeah, just give us information or give us tasks, and we'll take a look at it. And that's all I had for this session. We're a bit early, aren't we? What time is it?
Yeah, about 30 minutes.
Oh, wow. Yeah, quite a bit early. So if anybody has any comments or questions, feel free to yell
I
them
have a
out.
question for Stephen.
Mhm.
So how are they going to handle the calculation method of the old AADTs now to the new method? And because now you're comparing apples and oranges in a way. How, are you going to put a note to everyone saying these AADTs were calculated using one method and now this, because when we compare AADTs from year to year, there's going to be a difference based on our calculation method.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So what we do at Federal Highways is we never calculate AADT.